and welcome to this Scottish Farm Advisory Service webinar. My name's Alec Perry, and tonight I'm joined by SAC consultant Robert Ramsey, SAC consultant Ross McKenzie, and last but not least, Mr. Doug Avery, who's joining us from New Zealand this evening. We are incredibly lucky to have him here tonight. So very briefly, in tonight's meeting, we are going to be covering the 4 pillars of good mental and emotional health, identifying the issues that hold you back as an individual, and how to bring yourself back from the brink. We're also going to be having an open discussion with Doug, where we're going to be taking audience questions at the end of the presentation. So, obviously there's a lot of attendees on tonight, but if you have any burning questions for Doug, please feel free to jump into the questions tab and type away. After the presentation later on tonight, my colleague Robert is going to be reading out questions for Doug to answer, and we'll try and get through as many as we can before the broadcast ends. And without any ado, I'll pass over to Doug, and we'll get this kicked off.
I've entitled tonight "Bouncing Forward from a Crisis." We all know that during our lives we will have things happen. When I was in Scotland, you were all talking about Brexit. Everything that came up, every conversation I had, somebody would mention something about Brexit. It was the thing at the time that was causing the most concern. And then, of course, something greater came up, a bigger crisis, the COVID outbreak. Here in New Zealand, it's changed forever, probably the way we live, the way we integrate. And so my subline there is regenerating our lives. That's what I call bouncing forward from a crisis. Our lives are actually, unfortunately, but reality-wise, made of crises. And the most important thing isn't what happens, it's how we deal with what happens. So I'm looking forward to tonight to hopefully help you to get a new perspective or a stronger perspective on bouncing forward. The key word is bouncing forward, not back. So a lot of people will be looking to regenerate the past. That's probably not wise, because I kind of think that COVID could only be the first of this kind of thing, and we want to make sure going forward that our lives are not intercepted and disrupted as badly as we have this time. We create working situations around the planet that enable us to better deal with this in the future. That's the Beatles. You're all familiar with the Beatles. I was recently listening to an interview by Sir Ken Robinson, and he interviewed Paul McCartney, and he said to Paul, "Where did you go to school?" And Paul said, "I went to school in Liverpool." And he said to him, "When you went to school, did you learn music?" And he said, "Yes, I did." And Sir Ken said to him, "When you learned the music, did your music teacher recognize your unbelievable talent?" And he said, "No, he didn't. He looked at me and he talked to me and he indicated to me that he didn't think I was very good at music." And he added, George Harrison also went to the same school. He had the same teacher, he's 2 years younger. And Sir Ken said to him, did he recognise his talent in music? He said, no, he didn't. He's exactly the same as me. He thought he was very average at music. Here's a music teacher who has 50% of the Beatles in his class, and he missed it. Isn't that interesting? In our lives, we tend to only value what we already have seen and know. And yet the great and the hidden part of us is still to be developed. Elvis Presley went to school in Tombstone, Mississippi. At the high school he went to, there was a club called the Glee Club. They were a musical club. Elvis wanted to join. He loved music. They rejected his application because they thought that he would reduce the standard of the Glee Club. We all know how great the Glee Club from high school in Tombstone, Mississippi was. Isn't it incredible? We are all living in a world where we have unknown talents, where we still have the best of what we have to offer, possibly hidden. That's a picture of a car, or is it? When you look at that car, it sort of looks right and sort of looks wrong. The key message is when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. I can imagine opening the door and hopping into that car, but being totally unaware of what was going to happen next. In the course of the next hour in this presentation, I want to challenge your thinking. I want to ask you, what's your story? I'm a storyteller. We're all storytellers. When I get involved with people who are not traveling very well, the first thing they do with me is they tell me their current story. They'll come to my house, they'll make an appointment, come to my house, sit down on the couch. They'll always meet me at the door with a grin, but within minutes often they're sobbing, telling me their current story. This is what's happening to me, Doug. And I'll listen, and after about 40 minutes, they'll start to dry up of the urgency as they spill that story. About that stage, I'll ask them, tell me about your past story. And they'll sit up a bit and pull themselves together a little bit and say, do you mean, Doug, when I was happy? And I'll say, yeah, tell me about when you were happy. And that's a story that usually only takes about 10 minutes. They'll light up, they'll feel more energized, more invigorated, more regenerated. And they'll say, Doug, I used to be this kind of person. And about at that stage, I'll say to them, the only way that I can help you and the only way you can help anyone, and I hope that during the course of this presentation tonight, you will get some insights into how to help other people, not only yourself. I'll say to them, tell me about your future story. And they'll pause and they'll look at me and they'll say, do you mean, Doug, where I'm going to be in a year's time? And I'll say, exactly. Maybe 2 years, maybe 5 years, maybe 1 month. Where would you like to be? Because the only way that I can help you is to help you create your future. When you tell me where you'd like to be, we can then start to generate our intellectual capacity, both you and me, into how and what you need to do to make that journey. The language that goes with that is the future creates the present. When you can see where you want to be, you'll start putting your energy into that journey. A lot of you, I understand, are probably locked down, all of you. That will be mentally a huge challenge. You'll be thinking about the things that you would have been doing, the things that you like to have been doing, or the processes where you could have been. I'd like to suggest to you tonight that that kind of thinking is futile in the current environment. Now is probably the greatest opportunity you have had in your life to generate your future. When you choose to make that kind of thinking process in your head, the opportunity to have that come to reality will be greater than you care to imagine. If I go back to lockdown here in New Zealand, I spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to do with the balance of my life. And I am now flat out putting those things into action. The key function of that is your why. The center of my why is my head and my heart. That is the same with you. You've got all the componentry that goes into a life builds around what your head and heart starts to tell you it needs to do. in a kind of an interesting way, while a time like this feels like an inconvenience, if I think about the whole of human time, the greatest opportunities have been born from the times when we have had the greatest challenge. And that is a figment of developing our why. Right now, while you are in lockdown, you can re-establish why you are here, what you want to do in the future. Most of us haven't had time to do that in recent years because we have been so busy. I urge you to think about your why. And one of the things that I will do after this, I will send out a list of words and I'll challenge you to circle 10. They are why words. They are what you would like to be and what you would like others to see you. And if those things aren't the same, you won't have a good result. And then when you've got 10 of those words, and there's about 250 words or something on the page circled, narrow it down to the 2 words which create your why. This is who I am. This is what I want to do. My 2 words are faith and courage. I have the faith that if I apply everything that I know how to do in a positive way, I will prevail, and I have the courage to have a go. So there's 4 pillars of well-being, and I have learned these from all the people that I've worked with over the years that have been broken. To be right on top of things, and this is also a measure that you can put on other people, you need to have love, you need connection, you need purpose, and you need hope. All over the world at the moment, lots of people are losing their sense of purpose because they might have lost their job or they might have been forced into changing to do stuff that they don't fully understand. If you lose purpose, then you start feeling exposed to the thought patterns of other people. You'll lose connection. You'll deliberately not connect. You'll start to go into a depressed state. When you get like that, you lose a sense of hope. When you're that kind of person, you'll start being challenged with the love relationships that you've built up. So those 4 things, if you look around your circle of friends, look for how's their love, how's their connection, how's their purpose, and are they hopeful? And if you want to be a help to those people, ask yourself, what part of those 4 things can you help to recreate in that person? I showed this picture all across Scotland 2 years ago. It's a picture of going onto one of our farms out the front of our truck. I asked the question at the meetings, how many of you drove there? And then I asked the question, did you reverse your vehicle there? And you all giggled. And you said, no, we didn't reverse our vehicle because it's very hard backing. Reversing a vehicle was much harder than driving forward. I suggested to you that view is the correct view that you need to carry in life. The majority of it is out the front window. You can see where you want to go. It's very easy to connect your brain with the steering wheel and the direction of travel. And at times you can glance into the rear vision mirror and you can see what's happened behind. For those people that are finding the change that COVID has brought around, or Brexit, or whatever else, I suggest you look at that picture very closely. Don't spend your time trying to reverse your life into the future. It's too hard. Spend your time looking at the dimensions of how you drive your car. Be mindful of the past, but be present and ever enthusiastic about the journey in front. Look down that road in front and ask yourself, what do I do to make sure I end up at the destination that I'm planning? Remind yourself that when you can see where you want to go, that will be the way that you muster the greatest amount of your mental ability onto making sure that that journey occurs. Take the time in lockdown to grow your capability. There is so many ways that you can do that on the internet and in all sorts of ways. On the handout in tonight's thing, you'll see a little clip called Neuroplasticity. I'd love you to click on that and watch it after this presentation. I only became aware of neuroplasticity about 2 years ago. It is the science of recreating the strength of your brain. 20 or 30 years ago, 10 years ago even, neuroscientists thought that our brain developed until the age of about 24 and then slowly degenerated as we got older. Today we know that that is not true, that a brain can be regenerated for the entirety of our lives. It may not be able to be regenerated to the extent that it is in our youth, but we can always keep regenerating it. We have many ways of feeding our brain. We have eyesight, we have taste, we have touch, we have sound. We have all these ways that we bring information into our brains. Our brains are like highways on our nation. If a road to a part of our brain is often used, that will be the easy way to transfer things. If you're a negative kind of thinker, that every time something happens, you think, oh, well, you know, like old Jack down the road, he'll do okay out of this, but, you know, I'm never lucky. That will be transferring that information to the back part of the brain, which I call your grumpy zone. If by comparison you're a positive thinker like I am, information comes to me and I think, well, that's going to be hard, but what solution can I find? I'm sure I can solve this. It will go to the front prefrontal cortex, which is the red part of your zone. That's your happy place. And you'll immediately start getting on with processing it. Just like major highways around your nation, the highway, whether it's to the happy place or the sad place, the one that's getting the most use will be the one that opens up and your brain will use the freest. That's the power that neuroplasticity gives us. It's really exciting to think that if you want to change your life, you can start focusing on lifelong brain growth. Positive thinking helps this happen. The excitement that you might be like me at 65 years old, but my journey in learning is only just starting. And it's about regenerating oneself. New Zealand's just been through an election. I happen to support the losing side. I'm a person with very, very strong opinions. I develop my opinions. I think they're great. But when the election happened, there was a resounding defeat for people like me. I decided to take my opinions out on the lawn and give them a hiding with a cricket bat. And when I finished doing that, and I suggest that we all do this from time to time, I felt relief. I decided that from the next period of time, I'm just going to get stuck in and carry on developing the life that I believe in. And, you know, the moment I did that, I felt better about where I sat. I'd like to challenge you now as an individual people. When you get up in the morning, if you've got opinions that are really knocking you around, just let them go. Take them out on the lawn, get the cricket bat, give them a hiding. And one thing I'd say to you is, and if you're like me, I'm a strong, opinionated person. Once I'd actually done that, I felt so much better. That didn't mean that I've given away any of my principles, but I've found myself just accepting that a lot of other people currently don't share my opinion. You'll have opinions on how we should be dealing with COVID-19 or how we should be going about Brexit. But I'll talk shortly about your circle of influence and circle of concern. One of the nicest things for a growing mind is to be not carrying opinions and ideas that you can't control. During COVID here, I watched what I call the amplification of attitudes. So people who had strong relationships, and I felt I had a strong relationship with my wife, Wendy, we locked down. We'd never spent so much time together in our lives. We are two independent people that whip out and do all sorts of things, and we get together and discuss them. And I said to her, well, I don't know how well we're going to go here. We amplified, we grew stronger. But people who had weaker relationships, the amplification occurred the other way. And I'm sure the same thing is happening in your country. Amplification tends to build when you have strong opinions and you're not prepared to give them a bit of a knock around with the old cricket bat. The reaction that I've had from people is we all have a view of what perfection is. We'd all love perfection. But perfection is always rounded off with reality. And reality is something which is stronger and more enduring than anything we care to know. So therefore, it's really, really important that we keep ourselves based on this land of reality. This is a quote from Brene Brown. I love her. Google Brene Brown TED Talks and watch her talk on vulnerability. If we are brave enough, often enough, we will fail. It's kind of a thing that we don't like to admit that we would ever have failed. So where's the world going? I kind of not too sure, maybe like that. And here we are, little you and I, on the road of this great turning planet. We're not sure where it's going to go. It could go out there. This is change, a little or a lot. But don't become the person that ends up there. That's not going in the curve. So change is part of the evolution of mankind. We didn't want World War I, World War II. We didn't want COVID. But if you actually go back, the greatest things of all time are born from our hardest challenges. I'm not suggesting that you need to own all of change, but be a person who can soften your opinions and attitudes so that you can cope with them. I constantly run into people like this. They spend a lifetime confused and angry when all they need to do is be like these other ones over watching, thinking, what the hell are you doing? Most of the people that I deal with have approached a part of their life with a bucket over their head. So in my life, I found myself after a 5-year breakdown, looking at that sign, the rest of my life, average or memorable. I'd already found out what average was like. I wanted a memorable life. It meant letting go of stuff I couldn't control. But that raised a lot of fear, and fear has two meanings: forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. I've doubled the size of my business several times, and I get people coming to me and saying, Doug, could you help me to develop a bigger business? And I'll say, yeah, I'd love to. When are you going to start? And the first thing they'll say to me is, I'll start when I've got the confidence. I'll look at them and say, no, you won't. I don't know anyone who started with confidence on a set of business change. And they'll say to me, what I meant, Doug, was I'll start when I've got the capability worked out. And I'd say, well, when you do a major change in life, like we're going through with Brexit or when you're going through COVID-19, you're not going to feel confident or have all the capability. That is what's developed on the journey. There's a set of 4 C's in any person's journey, whether it's in business or life. The first thing you have to do is commit. Commit to the fact that you are going to make a new journey and that you are going to face this new world. And that takes courage. The first part about a new journey is there's a whole lot of new stuff going on and you didn't know about that before. and you're going to have to break all the comfort that you had from life that was previous in order to make that journey. And when you get into the courage zone, then you start heading to the capability zone, and then you get to the confidence zone. This next graph shows it beautifully. Vulnerability, or this is a saying here also from Brené Brown, vulnerability is having the courage to show up when you can't control the outcome. I make the point to you now that you can't make a change in life if you want to be in control of everything all the time. The two key words there, courage and control. So vulnerability is one of the keys to creating a pathway forward. We all know about our comfort zone. Some of you will be sitting at home in lockdown at the moment thinking, well, at least I'm safe from COVID. And, we're just going to sit here. We're not going to do anything over this period of time. And when this is all finished, we're going to resume as we were before. That's fine if you don't think the rest of the world's changing. But I can tell you that the world is changing now faster than it ever has. So that might be all right. It's safe, it's low risk, and you're in control. But if you want to go on an exciting journey, and I'm always one of those people that likes these kind of journeys, you've got to go into what I call the courage zone. When you go there, you'll be vulnerable, you'll be fearful. There'll be a lot of reasons why you should find an excuse to stay in your comfort zone. You'll lack self-confidence. And even more, you'll be affected by the opinions of others. When you go through change, other people will be quick to tell you, you watch, you'll fall over. We've heard that all the time. But actually, when you look at reality, the only way through any great journey is to take this, and those other people are the ones you want to keep well clear of. And then you start coming through the courage zone, you're dealing with the challenges and the problems. That's actually what the key to life is. Not knowing everything and being in the comfort zone. It's about actually having the presence of mind to accept that every challenge, every crisis has an opportunity for a solution. As you start developing those new skills, you'll get a sense of value about your own worth that will be very, very empowering. You see, the people that are prepared to go through the courage zone discover this stuff, and then it becomes like a drug. When something goes wrong, they immediately, in the neuroplasticity way, say, where is the opportunity? Their prefrontal cortex is on fire. This is going to be exciting. And then you get to the confidence zone, living your dream, finding purpose, setting new goals. You've got all this new knowledge which you've put into action, which you never realized you had the capability of doing. And then if you don't do something about it, your confidence zone suddenly becomes a bigger comfort zone. And so it's time for another set of 4 C's. I've employed this way of thinking for 20 years. It's been the most rewarding process that I've ever done. So if you feel that you've got the world on your shoulders, connect with other people. Keep giving. Give to people, because when you give to people, they'll give back. Take notice of what's going on around you. Keep learning and be active. So there's basically 2 types of people. There's resistant people. They're comfort zone people. And there's resilient people. And that's the proverbial shit. I don't like using that word particularly, but all around the world, wherever I've been, shit happens. And there's not really a better word to describe when you just think that you've got everything worked out. And in the case of most of us at the moment, that's COVID-19. Resistant people see it as a problem. Resilient people see it as an opportunity. So if you think that COVID is just a temporary process and when it's over, you're just going to move on business as usual, I suggest you're going to be disappointed. So here are the 2 different ways of thinking. These guys avoid challenges. These guys embrace them. Resistant people give up early. resilient people see the challenge as the opportunity, so they persist after setbacks. These guys think that effort is fruitless or worse, and resilient people know that the only way to create excellence is to persist and develop mastery at what you do. These guys hate negative feedback. These guys realize that criticism is the power that drives them forward. These guys feel threatened by the success of others. In New Zealand, we have it really bad. If you're successful, we like to take those people down. People like me are thirsty to connect with the inspiration of people who have been more successful than myself. The balance of my life, I want to spend my time turning as many people as I can round to address problems with solution thinking. That is the definition of resilience. It's your ability to bounce forward from a crisis. If I think about COVID-19, and if you change your thought patterns about that today, if you start to think about it as an opportunity rather than a problem, you will immediately start getting your brain resourced better to make that really happen. If you make today the start of your new journey and you keep reinforcing that positive attitude for 21 days, the roadway through your mind, if it's been a little bit negative about this stuff, will start being reinforced to the happy part of your brain, and that will give you the best chance. The dice of life. It's not like a playing dice. It's got risk on every face. The comfort zone, in my opinion, is the highest risk zone that a human being can live in. So when I found new wealth, new success, new ability in my life, I wanted to go out into New Zealand and share that process. I went out and I started changing people's thought patterns in the hope that their actions would move over and they would be reformed and new people. But after I'd left, they'd say it was all right for Dave. He's got everything and he knows how to do this and he's got a fantastic farm. They forget the fact that just a couple of years before, people said that we farmed in the worst place in New Zealand. After 3 years of touring New Zealand and getting bigger attendances at every presentation I ever did, I started to realise that I was wasting my life. And that's when I thought, I've got to change what I'm doing. I've got to go to what people believe. So I stopped talking to people about Lucerne systems and all the other farming systems that were put in place on Bonneville. And I started asking people, what do they believe? I started to talk to them about the things I've been talking to you tonight. If you believe you can do something, if you can see where you want to be, and then put your thought patterns with other people into that process, you will get there. And the quickest way to do that is with the help of people who have already achieved higher than you. Employ a mentor. I presented this all over Scotland, and people still occasionally send me emails with picture of geese and say they remember Doug Avery because of this slide. Geese fly in a V. The one at the front is doing all the work. They collaborate together, knowing that if they do that, they will get 71% more flying reach from flying in that V. The front one does the hard work, the rest benefit from the slipstream of the air. In my life, in the last 20 years, I've had at least 71% more advantage from surrounding myself with a V of capable people. Geese are smart. They take turns at flying the front, and as they fly, they honk. Some of that honking is the lazy ones at the back saying to the one at the front, keep flying, you beauty. I'm getting a free ride here. But the reality of great people is they never fly like that. They honk to the one at the front and say, I would like to take my turn at flying the front. Since I was in Scotland, some people in my V have gone and new ones have come in. I'm always reorganising my V. But the simple fact of the matter is the collaborative effect of that formation is huge for everybody in life. One of the reasons I advocate mentoring is because of the sigmoid curve. You're coming up here, your business is going really well, you've worked really hard. At A, it's time for change, because every business that's created will fail if it's not readdressed. No matter when you change your business, whether it's at H or at A, when you get on a bit, it always gets harder. You always need new learning, new thinking. You've got to go through the courage stage. When you're going through that stage, that's when you need mentors the most. Because the temptation when you get to point F or point I is it's not working, I want to turn back. Geese would never succeed if they turned back in their flight. The reason they're such a scourge on your crops is they're successful. And if you want to be great in your life, you must be prepared to reinvent yourself from time to time. I've been working with a travel agency in Motueka, which is just not far from here where I live in Blenheim in New Zealand. They were called Motueka Global World Travellers Motueka. Not much future in that when COVID came in. I've helped them rebrand to the Roving Kiwi, bespoke campervan tours, visiting some of the best and most hidden treats that New Zealand has to offer. Farms and the like, maraes, places where normally tourists would never get. I linked this man to those places. He's now back up and going. Phil and Harris and his wife have regenerated their whole business in 9 months. From a company which was taking people all over the globe to a company which is now flat out taking high wealth individuals from New Zealand on amazing journeys. Wendy and I are hosting one on the 24th of March 2021. That's just an example of a man who was completely broken, had to sell his home, sell his batch, rent a house, get rid of his offices in the central Motueka area. He now operates from a rented accommodation, but in 2 or 3 years' time, he will buy back bigger and stronger than he ever was before. An incredible individual who's been able to reach out for some help. I had the help and the contacts and launch one of the most exciting processes. When COVID's finished and the borders open up again, we'll have a choice of about 5 or 6 trips around New Zealand in camper vans and high luxury camper vans that are greater than any product that's ever been offered here before. That's a flea. If you get a flea and put it in a glass jar and put a clear plastic top on it, the flea will jump. He'll jump and he'll jump and he'll jump and he'll jump. He won't understand why he can't jump out of that jar, even though he knows he can jump 100 times his own height. That was Doug Avery in my drought, in my life drought, which was a weather drought. Some of you might be in a different kind of drought at the moment. You're jumping the same way and you don't understand why you can't jump out of that jar because you can't see your particular event of clear plastic. You can take the lid off and that flea will just sit there. It's given up. But in my situation and in the situation of Phil Harris, he reached out to somebody else and said, hey, can you help me? I can't understand. I need help to rebuild myself into the future. I got around Phil as scientists had around me on my farm and said, jump again, Doug, but jump a different way. And I have never been back in that glass jar again. During good times, we all get a top opportunity to bank. Here are some of the banks that farms have: Money Bank, Water Bank, Fertility Bank, Stock Condition Bank, Natural Capital Bank, hugely important Relationship Bank, Emotional Bank. How are all your banks at the moment? Sometimes you might be drawing on them. Sometimes you might be building on them. I look at life like a graphic equalizer. We've got all these different areas. COVID has disrupted us. We need to be aware of our social well-being, our mental well-being, our physical well-being. After COVID, I found myself too close to the fridge too often, and I've put on a bit of weight. I'm flat out losing that. My mental condition is excellent. My social condition was terrible. I just was so craving to get out and hug people. I will be sharing this presentation as a PhD file, and I urge you, if you want to follow through some of these things, get it and have a look. Go through, ask yourself these questions. So for a great future, we need to let go of the past. We need to disrupt ourselves or be disrupted. COVID-19 has left us globally disrupted. The status quo never prevails. Disruption is a part of recreation. It is an essential part of generating the opportunity to move forward. Turn your mind to looking at the opportunities. Encourage courage amongst yourself and others. The spirit of reinvention is one of the greatest things to make you think well. Be prepared to step away from the normal, to be an independent thinker. Embrace failure. As I said before, if you're bold enough, often enough, you will fail. But the key factor with that is think about it. Knocked down 9 times, got up 10. The man that talks to you today, when I embraced change, had more failure than I'd ever had before, like I showed you on the sigmoid curve. But because I had created a V, I kept flying. We kept pushing. We kept shoving for the ideas. We kept asking. We haven't succeeded yet. And that was a key. It's only a matter of time until we eliminate all the things that are preventing us from success. Our farm leader now, our son Fraser, he is the ultimate in calm. And I've watched as a father as he operates. And I used to often be a bit stressed. But calm is the road that creates opportunity. And remember to imagine the possibilities. The road that we've travelled on in this world prior to COVID will not be the road of the future. Be prepared to turn your mind. If you look to the past all the time for solutions to the future, the only thing you'll find is because there hasn't been a future like we're going to, you will have a fruitless journey looking behind you. If you feel the solution to your agriculture or whatever endeavour you have got is hard work, I suggest that you turn to smart work. That's when you drop the hardened attitudes, the hardened opinions that you've got, and start sharing softer dialogue with those around you. And reject limits. I believe, certainly in this country, we will come out stronger and more enabled and better for the future than we possibly could have been if we'd just had business as usual. And people will say to you, there's only one way to do this, but I'll challenge them. I can't think of anything that has not had another way. You can sit around and talk about it all you like, but sooner or later, if you're like me, you've got to commit. You've got to go through the courage stage. You've got to develop new capability and then live for that time when you feel that warm sensation of confidence. My favourite one-liner is the sweetest fruits are on the outside branches. As a young man, I was up the tree picking my fair share of fruit. But when the drought hit me, I became what I called a trunk hugger. I went down there, I laid off my staff, I stopped spending money, but in no time at all, I realised there was no fruit on the trunk. A science group got with me and promoted me to, Doug, here's a new way of jumping. Jump a different way. Get back up on the branches. While the fruit is all growing out on the little tiny branches and there is risk, mitigate your risk with knowledge. Right now during COVID is the greatest time you have had where you can spend growing your knowledge for when this is over. We are all full of concerns. We might got rid of old Trumpy. He might be on his way out, or who knows. I was in this situation where I was worried about absolutely everything, and then I started concentrating on the things that I could influence. A great starting point for any new journey is to write down a list on one page with the concerns that you've got in life, and then ask yourself which are the ones I can influence, and only put your life into that. We had pastures that looked like that returned very little. We transformed them on a large area to pastures that returned so much more money and so much more performance on our farm. We jumped out of our jar. We literally turned Bonneville on its head. The same family in the same valley with the same weather, but a completely different outcome. Ours was based on a plant, but also on systems. We developed grazing systems and new plants, which lifted our performance to very close to the leading edge of sheep and beef in New Zealand. We grew new clovers. We relied on clovers to fix our nitrogen, and that enhanced all procedures over the farm. That's our lead now, oldest son, Fraser. You'll notice the red hair. That's what happens when you live too close to a salt lake. And to do that, we adopted measuring more stuff. And we've just recently, as a family, decided we are upping our measuring again. If you don't measure things, you can't manage them. So maybe right now is a time to ask, what do you measure in your life? I always tell the story to people, if you're lost in a forest, you can't see anything that distinguishes the journey forward. And then you suddenly think to yourself, oh, silly me, I've got a map in my pocket. You get the map out and lay it on the forest floor. It's of no use. So a great place at any time in your life is to make sure you know where you are now by measuring as much as you possibly can. When you know where you are, from then on, you will be able to manage the process. You will be able to accept that, okay, to move from here, it's going to get harder in the sigmoid kind of way. But we know that before we start. And in a couple of 3 years' time, we'll be able to measure and say, gee, look how far we've come. At Bonneville, we use computer programs, Farm IQ, which is a diary program which records every activity that occurs on the farm. We use the accounting package Xero and Figured, and those are all linked together with an amazing program we use here in New Zealand called FarmX. I think it's available, and it's a scenario program. It's a program which allows us to see out where we could be and to start to understand the extra advantages we'll get by being there. We're not happy with that. We've recently developed a dashboard which will show everything about our farm, including nutrient leaching, carbon footprint, the energy that our big team of wonderful people puts into that business, and it's updated monthly so that we are always on that journey of improvement, self-improvement. So I see far too many people like this. They're smiling, but underneath they're sad. We've started measuring our well-being with a new app called Kind, a friend of mine put out. It measures your mind, it measures your physical being, and it comes up with a score. All over New Zealand now, we're starting to develop a Kind score with pretty much all the people that we possibly can get to do it. It doesn't take that long. And it's just like the measuring of all other details. It tells us individually and you can do it in your own time with a bit of help from a doctor measuring a few things, the kind of things that are going on in your mind and in your body. And if you're going through a rough time at the moment, remember it's okay to say, I'm not okay. All of us at times will be in this situation. And when I feel overwhelmed by the world around me, I write on the mirror, right now, I am enough. And I look at it every time I look in the mirror. Right now, I am enough. And then when I start to feel strong, I think it's time for a set of 4, because I know the comfort zone is one of the most dangerous places I can stay. That's our youngest son, Richard. He's run 240.4 kilometres in a 24-hour day. He taught me a one-liner, and this is a beauty. If you're going to go out there and push yourself, never forget this. You win or you learn. When you go to do something new and it's hard, don't expect to win straight away, or don't expect to win on the first several occasions. But if every time you don't succeed in the challenge you've set yourself, take it as a learning experience. What did I learn? You only lose if you don't learn. Mentally fortify yourself by that one-liner. You win or you learn. At Bonnevere now, our farm, we never lose. We just keep learning. We just keep building knowledge and capability. We have lots of groups visit the place, and the key message that they have is they don't care how much we know until they see how much we care. We're expanding in our environmental plant. We at Bonnevere are proud to be farmers. The cave we fear to enter holds the treasure we seek in life. I love that saying. It is so true. Every great journey forward requires us conquering our fear, our apprehension, opening ourselves to be vulnerable, and stepping into that unknown territory. Success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. If you love what you do, you will be successful. Yesterday I was clever. I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise. I am changing myself. If you find yourself blaming others in life, run the ruler over yourself and ask, why did I get myself into this position? I don't blame other people for anything. I always just challenge myself to grow. Happy are those who dream dreams and are prepared to pay the price to make those dreams come true. I showed a lot of these slides in Scotland. They're as relevant today as they were 2 years ago. You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step. Learn to commit. When you want to try something new, accept the challenge of the 4 C's. Commit, go through the courage stage, and grow. My father's favourite one-liner, we are each given 2 hands, one to help ourselves and one to help others. We need to wrap our hands around this beautiful world and grow something special. And my second to last slide, which is as relevant to me today as it was the day I took this picture. That's Johnny Peter, my mentor, my first outside mentor after my father. And Johnny, people say to me, why do you take a picture of his back? And I say what Johnny did was taught me to look forward, to step out, to take the courage, to reach for the opportunities, not look back and wonder why. Look forward and ask why not. Vision without action is just a dream. Action without vision is just activity. Vision and action together can change your world. And my last slide today, and then we'll go to questions. What matters most is how you see yourself. Have you reached your potential yet? Probably not. Do you accept that in the journey to reaching your potential, you will get knockbacks? That's just a given. But wrap around yourself a team and go out there, look in the mirror and ask yourself, What am I? In the words of the late Michael Jackson, I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. If you want to make your world a better place, take a look at yourself and make the change. And now we'll go to question time. Thank you very much for your attention. 1 hour.
Thanks very much, Doug. That was that was some really great stuff. I will just take control of the presentation.
Good.
Excellent. So thank you very much, Doug. There's a whole lot to think about there. The first thing we should do, I suppose, is Alec and I should point out that we're not it's not just a random coincidence that we've both got moustaches on. It's 14 days to go. We're getting there. Now, again, lots to think about, and there's lots of questions have come in and plenty scope for more. So please do ping someone. We're at 9 o'clock just now, so I think if we could have probably a 10-minute session, that would be really good, and that allows people to bed or for you to get on with the rest of your day, Doug. So basically, to start with, I think lots to think about. So from a new entrant perspective, you've talked about change a lot today, and I think it'd be wrong at this stage not to acknowledge that our new entrants program's changed. And to start with, we were pretty concerned as to what we would do with it. And over the course of this, we've been to California, South America, and now we're in New Zealand. So it's been really quite a nice change for us. But focusing on new entrants, what would you say to a young person who's looking to get involved in agriculture at the moment, but taking a step back at the moment because they're concerned about political uncertainties and challenges out there at the moment?
Oh, the first thing I'd say to that is when New Zealand announced it was going to have lockdown, behaviour in our supermarkets was pandemonium as people raced around the place and filled their trolleys with food. And for the 3 years prior to that, we'd been under a lot of pressure home here from our own people about our environmental behaviour and animal welfare behaviour and all sorts of things. New Zealanders transformed overnight, not all of them, but most of them, to realising they needed food and where the food came from. So the big question, I said it when I was in Scotland, New Zealand farmers will never be a threat to Scottish farmers, again, in the sense of dumping product onto your land. We're in a new world, and I've noticed in the last period of time, here in New Zealand anyway, people are actually going back. There was a lot of fake meat around and stuff. That sort of all got discounted. Now it's most of the supermarkets not even carrying it. And so our basic agricultural businesses have never been so important. So if you have a bent that agriculture is the way to go, get involved. But get involved with the view that you're going to be part of the solution. Here in New Zealand, I wanted to help farming become part of the solution, not a group of people that are constantly getting called to account for what's gone wrong. So we need, as producers, to own the solution. It's all the stuff that I've been talking about today. So my unshakable advice to you is have faith that the production of food is not even likely to be off the radar anytime soon. Go out there and get it. And it's always been hard. If you think that it's harder now than it's ever been, that's just something that humans love to grab hold of. That's not solution thinking. Solution thinking is accepting that it's going to be hard, but finding the people that you need in your V to ensure that you make that journey successfully.
Yeah, excellent. Brilliant answer. Succession's a theme that's coming up quite commonly in these questions. It's often a source of huge stress and pressure for families particularly, and the more successful the family is, often the bigger problem they've got when it comes to succession. What advice would you give to a family or a person involved in at the very start of a succession battle potentially? How do you navigate through that?
So I'm still involved in that process myself, and I'm going to have it all sorted by the 1st of July next year. So about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I employed a person. So everything this man that's talking to you does, I always get somebody who knows more about stuff than me. So I don't try to do the hard stuff. I'm just a person. I'm one of those lazy geese at the back that are looking forward all the time saying, I've got somebody better than me running this thing. We employed a professional in New Zealand. There's a company called Coach Approach. And he came in, he sat down with my wife and I and asked us what we wanted. And then he checked out the family dynamics. And then he went to each one of our children and he asked them, what do they want? And then they all wrote down, and he made it really clear, this isn't a practice run. What do you expect? You must be honest and write it down. And then he checked that all out with everybody, wrote it all down, came back to Wendy and I, showed us what other people had written. We showed the kids what we wanted. The primary thing for us was mum and dad, us, Doug and Wendy, we're going to be looked after into the future. We're not surrendering everything that we've got. And then there's the children. And the big thing that I managed to get over the line with our 3 children was that Fraser, the one that's been home on the farm since 2002, had a bigger share and rightful shareholding than the other 2. That doesn't mean he gets the whole lot, but he gets a bigger share. And the other 2 are happy about that. And what we're doing now is just working through the timing and the process. So it was a very emotional period of time. I handed away financial control. For the week after that, I felt like I was walking with a bloody knife in my back. I felt so gutted and empty. The other day, we had a celebration on the farm to celebrate a big win in winning Marlborough Farmer of the Year. That was Fraser's win. And I sat there with pride, seeing our next generation not only going forward, but lifting the bar on where we'd ever been. So I accept all the stuff I've talked to you today about looking back into the past or looking into the future. Where do you want your family? Is your business profitable? If it's not profitable, what are you succeeding? And so the first thing that I set out as an individual farmer for my calamitous bloody breakdown 20 years ago was to generate a hugely profitable business. And that required me to change the dynamics of the V that was running the business. So I stopped trying to be the brilliant fella who was knowing everything and not really knowing enough. So succession starts young. It's always going to be hard, and it requires communication beyond belief so that there is no one that doesn't know what's going on. It's hard.
And I think that's the thing, no matter where you are in the world, that you have to talk about it. Brushing it below the carpet means it's only going to get bigger, and the problem's going to get bigger and not go away. So
every succession that I've been involved in where people decide, look, I'll do it next year, is a bad result.
Yeah. Another interesting question, and again, it's a theme, but how did you go about finding your mentor who obviously had a huge impact on you?
Johnny Peter was the first mentor outside of my father, and it wasn't till I actually started being mentored by Johnny how I realised that relying on learning from my dad was a terrible error. Dad will remain the greatest mentor I've ever had, but the whole concept of a V formation is actually reaching out to gather the volume of knowledge you need to live in this world today. Letting go of ownership of every goddamn thing you can was the most successful strategy that I've ever had. So Johnny Peter was probably the best farmer, in my view, that Marlborough had ever had. And as a young guy, he'd been desperately good to me. He'd bought a lot of seeds and stuff off me, and he used to come around and he'd say, I want to come while you're harvesting the seed. And he'd look at grass seed and he'd say, I'll take the whole paddock, Doug. And he was involved in doing stuff like I'd never seen before. And I suddenly I just wanted to get involved. So I got involved in a group was called the Star and Reflexivant Soil Conservation Group. He pulled it together. I only got involved because I wanted to get closer to him. So if there's somebody out there that you think, gosh, I'd love to be like that person, have the courage to ring them. The worst thing they can say is, no, I'm not interested in mentoring you. But if they say yes, be prepared to invest time with that person. It takes time to grow relationships. And every relationship that you grow that can help you when things go a bit wrong is a part of that real power of that V. So it's about actually dreaming. Our chairman of our board now, Barry Brook, he was the CEO of PGG Wrightson's, which is the biggest stock and station company in New Zealand. He's been chairman of all sorts of things. I said to him one day, I can't believe that you enjoy working with us. He said, Doug, of all the places I'm working, I love working with your family the most. So don't be afraid of life, of thinking that you're insignificant or your business is too small. The biggest thing that will impact on those people that come in is your attitude that you are going to listen and adopt. And if you're not, why did you ask that person?
Yeah. It's also worth flagging up at this stage. So now, through the Farm Advisory Service, we can now get some funding for mentoring as well. So it's not a bottomless pit of money, but it gives that person coming in a bit of an acknowledgement, a bit of funding for their time. So it makes that discussion an awful lot easier, to phone them up and ask a few questions and challenge things. So that funding's there, and if you need any more information, it's on the website. There's a lot of questions, Doug, relating to people who are struggling and to, challenges. And I think the real question people are asking is, what about those people? So today, there'll be people at home struggling who are not listening today. How do we get this message out, and how do we support people remotely rather than the conventional way we have been in the past?
Well, if you know, this has been one of the worst things with COVID, because like I find if I ring somebody up and ask them how are they, they'll always tell me they're fine. Everybody, no one ever says I'm not fine. They'll always say they're fine, and that's one of the incredibly challenging parts with regard to mental health that COVID's brought. Ask yourself, if you're thinking about a particular person, the 4 things I mentioned: love, connection, purpose, and hope. And just the fact that you're ringing and connecting. So I've been working with a young guy, 23, tried to take his own life just at the start of COVID. I thought I had him back really well. About a week ago, he sent me a suicide note again, told me he couldn't do it. I got in touch with him again. We had a really big conversation. He ended up apologising to me about the message he'd sent, and I said to him, that's not really the point. I said, what you're saying to me is you just keep reverting back to where you are, and we make progress. And that's actually something that does happen with people that are traveling through a really tough time. You have to be prepared for them to revert, and that's really challenging. If you think about the love, connection, purpose, and hope, if there's somebody that you love, that you care for, that is in a position where you know they're not well, ask yourself, can I contribute at this time in some way? And the phone call might be the best thing you can do. And if they tell you that they're all right, that's fine, but still ring and ask them something and divert some of their day, just something a little bit meaningful. And if they tell you, start ranting onto stuff that's quite challenging, ask and think about what I said about opinions today. When you're not well, your opinions harden, your arteries harden, your heart hardens. Try to soften their language. Try to soften their point of view. Try to encourage them to let go of some of the really staunch kind of attitudes that they've developed. Often they're not real. They are just perceived thoughts. And if you can just try to break those down. But I'm a hugger, and I've always I love people come to my house, captains of industry, just ordinary people. They'll sit down and they'll say they're fine and then start spilling their story and bursting out crying. And, I know that while that reaction is kind of a little bit disturbing, there was somebody that you didn't realise was in such a bad way. I know when the tears start to flow that's actually a good part. It means that some of that softening has started to occur. So one of the things I'd add here is with mental health, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid that you don't know enough, that you're not experienced enough, that you a caring, concerned phone call or even a chat on Zoom. If you can launch somebody into having a chat like this, at least you can see their face. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid that you'll say the wrong thing. The worst thing for a person living in hell is the silence of their own vacuum.
Yeah, that's a really good message for us all. We have, that'll be the most important message probably of the night, but we've got 4 more quick questions. I'm going to do 1 and then 3 together, that they all sit quite well together. The first one I don't think will take long to answer, which is
I'll try to be quick.
Have the All Blacks been in touch, because it looks as though the journey they're on is heading in the wrong direction?
Yes. I personally feel it was a terrific thing. The Pumas have been getting closer and closer to beating us. And as a true All Black fan, it was the last thing we wanted to have happen. But for World Rugby, it's an awesome thing. I never felt Foster and Kane were going to do the job anyway. And Razor Robinson will eventually be the All Black coach, will be game on again. So now's a good time to squeak in a win against the All Blacks while we're pretty weak. I happened to have the great pleasure of sharing yesterday entirely with Smiley Kevin Barrett, who is the father of 3 current All Blacks. And I don't think we've ever had a father that could be more proud than him. But also, I remember in a game about maybe a year, 2 years ago, where Scotland came within a hair's breadth of beating us. And in a way, as a Kiwi, it's the monkey off your back when these things finally happen, because every time a game occurs. So don't give up. And you can rest assured that the day that you beat the All Blacks, there'll be kilts flying high all over the place. And I'll be having a quiet little single malt whiskey from Scotland on you and celebrating that time. So do it. It'll be interesting to see what happens in a week and a half's time. I suspect the Pumas know how to do it now, and anything could happen.
Interesting times. So the 3 last questions all go together, really. So 1 is, what was your favourite place in Scotland when you were here? 2 is, what did you learn from your trip? And 3, will you come back to do another tour?
I'll start with the last one. I'd love to. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. The 30 days that were in Scotland taught me, the first thing I learned was I thought Australia was the closest country to New Zealand in the world. And the 30 days that I spent in Scotland told me that I was wrong. New Zealand is closer to Scotland than any other country. I came home from that tour and was sick for 6 weeks. So if I ever come back, you won't be able to work me as hard. I loved every day that I was there, but I struggled in the latter stages because it was such a grueling campaign. And the answer to the first question, I can't answer, because I didn't have a place where I went, where I just went, oh, wow. We went from Orkney, from in the southern border country where I think the Graham side of me came from, and out to the west and to the east, and the hospitality. I rate Edinburgh as my favourite city of the world, over and above any New Zealand cities. I absolutely love this, especially the last stay that we had in the right up by the top of the Golden Mile, just off the main street. The folk that we met, quite a lot of people have been to stay with Wendy and I here in New Zealand. That's been absolutely special as well. So yeah, the short answer is I'd love to come back sometime. And likewise for Scottish people looking to come to New Zealand, the roving Kiwi that was set up is going to be the kind of tour that a lot of you would have wished that existed here before. So it's a pretty exciting process, and just I hope that all of you will spend the next period of time, which is going to be bloody challenging. If you're locked down again, but don't spend it as don't let it waste. And waste might be just doing something completely different. I decided to write another book during lockdown. Since we're not locked down, I got too busy out there enjoying life again, and the book's come to a halt. We're just making the Resilient Farmer book into a talking book, which is pretty good. And I didn't do it myself because I just wasn't interested in spending that volume of time. But yeah, take care, everybody in Scotland. I love you. And yeah, I'd love to come back. Love to.
Well,
So would Wendy.
I'm sure you'll be made most welcome when the time allows, or when we're allowed to travel and things. So, with that in mind, I'm conscious we have run over time by some way. So, at this stage, I'd just like to thank you very much, Doug, for answering those questions and for your presentation today. And I will just hand back over to Alec.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Fantastic, Robert. And Doug, I know I speak for the rest of the Farm Advisory Service and everyone here tonight when I say that it's been a really great presentation. I'd just like to end things here tonight by asking the attendees who are still with us if they can fill out the evaluation forms that will be made available to them in the next couple of days. It's really important for the Farm Advisory Service that we get feedback on the events that work and what we can do to improve going forward. Doug, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a really great night.
Thank you very much for having me, and take care. Keep safe.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.